Concordia University under Dr. Eldad Tsabary. The opera that I'm working on is a remodernization of the Cherry Orchard by Anton Chekhov at the end. And rather than being placed at the end of the 19th century in Russia, it's placed at the end of the Vietnam War in 1975 near Saigon. If you remember the play by Chekhov, it's about how a bunch of landowners get expropriated by actually social change. In my case, it's how the communists, when they arrived in southern Vietnam, started expropriating South Vietnamese industrialists, bourgeois, and things like that. It's really based on my own family history. So all those South Vietnamese ended up by being boat people or migrants mostly. So I'll remember you a few quotes by Marx that used to be very popular, but now we actually know what they mean. So, for example, Marx says, abolish all private property. The expropriators are expropriated. The abolition of private property is therefore the complete emancipation of all human senses and qualities. He goes on like that. I mean, Marx is a big fan of expropriating people. So this opera is going to be my third opera after Sarah Kane's Fitzgerald and Antigone by Sophocles' Antigone. All are available on streaming, so you can find me on Spotify. The details of that, but it's a new music paradigm. I think George Lewis is pretty popular right now in New York. I think he became the director of the ensemble at the International Contemporary Ensemble in New York. So we basically put into music Oonagh's manifesto, shortened manifesto. The first time we did that was at the Arts and Human Rights Conversing Multiplicity Symposium. We also tested it in a Rise micro opera, Handled with Care, Values in Our Heart, in our hearts. So basically what we do is that in those performances, we read something, the system listened to what we read and generated music to accompany us automatically. In this case, actually, I just fed it a recording of Oonagh reading the shortened manifesto because we had editing problems and things like that. So the AI uses music that I composed and assembles it in a strange way. So let me continue. This is actually what the software looks like under the hood. I thought it was interesting just to show you. So the 4 columns basically are for each sections of the orchestra. For example, the strings, the brass, the winds, and the piano. And it improvises music following an input that we give it. So let's finish with the manifesto itself, the montage, video montage done by Kofi, and the reading of the shortened manifesto by Oonagh. And so let me start this.
Building Positive Relations, a manifesto for the arts, new materialism, posthumanism, and human rights. Inspired by the experience of sharing artistic works and diverse perspectives, this manifesto seeks to connect individual and collective reflections and generate new thinking about how to build positive relations between the arts, posthumanism, new materialism, and human rights. We embrace inclusive and interdisciplinary research and practices that recognize our interdependence with each other and the material world. We strive to use artistic expression and human rights advocacy to decode and challenge unjust legal, economic, cultural, and social practices. Our individual and collaborative work of advocacy, teaching, art making, and performance seeks to convey the importance of human rights being for everyone in every society without exception. We seek generative ideas that encompass wonder, caring, nurturing, identity, solidarity, kinship, community, and kindness. How do indigenous ways of knowing and new materialism help us understand our relationship with the universe of animate and inanimate non-humans? Can we reimagine human rights to include these relationships, to draw connections between the inherent dignity of each person and the inherent dignity of each tree, bird, river, or mountain? We seek to learn more about each other, feel connection, and create solidarity so we can solve local and global problems together. As posthumans experiencing cyborg existence in the Anthropocene, we celebrate technological advances while confronting our individual and collective impact on the planet. We seek to bring ethical, transparent, inclusive, democratic, and sustainable approaches to our lives and enabling technology. We celebrate the flame of creativity and individuality in each of us. We create to learn about our motivations and the materials and methods of making and to express ourselves. We create together to deepen our understanding of each other and to experience creative communion. We work together across disciplines to explore meanings, share concerns and knowledge, and find alternative approaches to address the crises of the Anthropocene. We employ diverse, collaborative, and individual, reflective, and creative processes. We endeavor to be compassionate allies with human rights and environmental defenders. We seek to be gentle on our environment and to care for the materials and beings we involve in our art making. We work to decode and reimagine legal and governance structures to strengthen environmental and human rights protections. We seek to create new forms of beauty that connect us to the joyousness of life as it unfolds beyond all beliefs, sorrows, and suffering.
And that's it. So if you have questions, fino.nguyen@gmail.com. Yeah, so let me stop sharing this. That's it for me.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much. Now we turn to Stanley Fevrier. He's a visual artist and a sculptor based in Montreal. And you can learn more about him and his work by visiting his website at www.fevrierstanley.com. So Stanley, this is all yours. Oh, I'm sorry, right? No, I'm sorry. We go now with Anna and Grazia. So sorry, all of you guys. Grazia Peduzzi has a degree and background in teaching philosophy. In 2011, she founded Emergent Art Space, a non-profit organization that she directs, offering cross-cultural communication and exchange platforms for young artists around the world. Together with Wettrich, today they're going to present talk and works as an artist, educator, and an executive consultant, engaging pressing social and cultural concerns. Currently, as director of programs for Emergent Art Space, she works with young artists across the globe. In addition, I must say that I have the honor of working with them since many years ago, and today being part of this amazing family as an advisory board member. You can learn more about this organization by visiting its website at www.emergentartspace.org. So now it's correct, Grazia and Anand. This is all yours, sorry.
Thank you so much, Ramon. We miss you. I'm supposed to present briefly Emergent Art Space, the organization that we started 12 years ago in San Francisco. And the idea was, I was actually inspired by my students when I was teaching philosophy of art in an art college in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So the mission of the organization was and is to support young artists, art students or post students, artists under 30. And the focus was to encourage exchange, dialogue, and cross-cultural communication. So it started right away as an international, with an international scope. We started a website as the platform where young artists could upload and show their works and exchange ideas, projects, etc. The focus, as I said, was cross-cultural, with the belief that the arts are a universal language that can communicate across the cultures. And communication is the first step toward understanding. Our live exhibitions were actually all around this theme. Like the first one was Crossing Borders, and Ramon was there with an interesting video that actually crossed the borders metaphorically, but also literally, because the same show went to South Korea and Mexico. And then we had building bridges or translations. And yeah, what does it mean to translate from one culture to another? And so the response to these calls for art by young artists was really amazing, overwhelming, kind of confirming that, yeah, we can communicate through the visual arts. It was mainly visual because it was all on a platform, internet platform. But this point of communication is taking me to one of the questions that were proposed for this conversation. And the question was something like, what can the arts do that other traditional means of advocating for human rights cannot do? I mean, what do the arts have to add? I'm trying to give a tentative reply, and my point is that, yeah, as you all know, I mean, the languages of the arts are different from the linear, sequential, verbal languages. So they, why? It's still not very clear. They speak to the hearts maybe before they speak to the minds. Are they more direct or less direct? Do they speak to the left side of the brain as opposed to the right side of the brain? That is kind of obsolete distinction concept. They certainly activate certain circuits and pathways in our brains that are different. And we still know very little about it, but we all witness the effects that artistic expressions have on ourselves and on the others. And the experience on Emergent Art Space, showing works by young people from all over the world, from African countries to India to Europe to the Americas, have shown this, have shown this power of the language of art. I was just saying that wanted to say that the governments, dictatorial governments who have used the arts as propaganda, know very well the power of the arts. And so I leave Anne now to explain. not to explain. I'm sorry to talk about the show. I'm sorry not to explain.
Thank you, Grazia. I would just like to say, by way of transition, that the secret sauce of Emergent Art Space comes from Grazia's leadership vision and her disposition of openness, curiosity, generosity, and absolutely trust in a situation of risk.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now I'm going to do a little magic trick, and I'm going to go to a different screen because we're having a little technical issue here. So it'll allow me to share my screen better. So I'm going to put, can you mute?
Oh, sure.
And I will appear in another box in just a minute. Okay. So now here I am. Oh, put it on mute.
I did mute.
Anne, we can't hear you. Anne, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you hear? We can't hear you. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was muted. I didn't realize that. Okay, I've been asked to talk briefly about the Emerging Art Space, Arts and Human Rights online and live exhibitions. What I'm going to do after I talk is put a bunch of links in the chat so you can get more detailed information from these brief remarks I'm going to give. Okay. So in 2023, we did a call for art to young artists around the world to apply to be part of an online arts and human rights exhibition that opened on May 16th. From 120 applicants, we selected works from 40 artists across 18 countries from Asia, Africa, North and South America. The works encompass an array of visual media, including photographs, drawings, and paintings, along with video and performance work. The inspiration for this exhibition came from our partnership in the International Human Rights Symposium, organized and developed by Human Rights Research and Education Center at the University of Ottawa, Canada, and was led by Oonagh and Ramon. After the symposium, Oonagh and Ramon invited us to co-curate and include the works of artists from our online show in Montreal at the Concordia University's Arts and Human Rights Conversing Multiplicities live multimedia exposition in the late spring. We have been honored to be able to show a video of our online exhibition and mount 17 physical works in the gallery space as part of the exposition. So not only do we have an online show, we're able to have a live physical space and participation with wonderful collaborators. Okay, so the exhibition speaks to artists' perspectives on what our rights are as human beings, how human rights are often ignored, infringed upon, and violated. These are experiences felt and shared across cultures and geographic boundaries. Through embodied representations in symbolic, poetic, and abstract visual forms, the artists represent a wide spectrum of injustices, inequities, oppressive forces, and concerns, including racism, censorship, violence, inequity, poverty, marginalized identities, forced migration, and environmental displacement and degradation. So now, if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I'm going to put some specific examples and images online for you, and I will talk a little bit more about those. Okay. Okay, so here, sorry. How do I get full screen? That's okay. View full screen. Sorry. Is it okay? Anyway, I'm doing the best I can here technically. Okay. So the first image you see is Kenan Peter, an artist from Nigeria, showed a large oil painting entitled Silenced Words that speaks to the right to express oneself and to have access to education without restriction or censorship. The painting depicts a young boy constrained with both hands spread outward, holding a book in his left hand and a pen in his right. His hands are tied together by a rope, preventing him from freely expressing himself. A striking aspect of the painting is the boy's sealed lips, underlining the silence of his thoughts and opinions. This is an image by Jayate Bhattacharya, an artist from India, and it's called Memories for the Future, and is a triptych of mixed media works on paper, representing the idea of conflict in an abstract manner. She describes these drawings as an experience of an encounter of her vulnerable self with the unstable present. She feels that human rights and conflicts are associated with each other in very complex ways. The active humans are becoming the reason for conflicts and constructions of human rights. It is also as if the motion of the wave has been set and is traveling into an enigmatic time. Actions of the present will become a memory for the future. Her drawings speak of a time when land and home were lost. The next image is by Aiden Matlabi, an Iranian-Canadian artist, who showed a large digital photo print, As the Wind Blows, Masha Becomes the Wind. This work engages the power of portrait photography to highlight the stories of an Iranian woman's liberation and their continual revolution. The woman in the act of taking off the veil is powerful representation of an act of liberation from a social and cultural restraint imposed. Ignacio Cote Cardin from Spain shows a digitally altered photo, Not So Sweet Memories. This work depicts a comparison between two different historical moments, reflecting on the passage of time and the ability of human beings to rebuild and remake things after conflict. The photo embeds an image from the Spanish Civil War, a scene of chaos and violence in the streets, to a photo taken from the same point of view years later. And finally, Sai Blank, a Burmese artist now in exile from Myanmar, shows a large installation portrait of his father from his larger Trails of Absence project. The image depicts his father prior to Myanmar's military coup during November 2020 election. This piece foretells the ominous future where his father was arrested in an early morning raid on February 1st, 2021, and was interrogated, tortured, held hostage, and sentenced to prison for more than 20 years on false charges. Emergent Art Space established an enduring relationship with Sai prior to the Myanmar coup in 2019. We worked with him to curate an exceptional live exhibition of exciting young artists' work in Yangon and have been in touch with him ever since. He is currently seeking asylum and justice through his artworks and installations that have been featured in several European exhibitions. The most recent is hosted by Amnesty International in the UK. His works aim to address and raise awareness of the impact of the 2021 coup in Myanmar on his family as a way into an understanding of the ongoing large-scale urgent plight of the country. Okay. So before we turn to questions, I would like to show Sai's 2-minute video telling his story. And I believe Oonagh has that, and she can turn it on right now.
As you stop sharing.
Oonagh?
Yes, if you stop sharing.
Now it's mute. So I'm going to turn that off. Okay.
Hello everybody, I'm here today as an artist and human rights activist. I want to share you a project close to my heart, Trails of Absence, which is about political prisoners and their family, including my very own. In Myanmar, which is my home, I've witnessed the resilience of pro-democracy supporters and the suffering of their family and a repressive regime. The world needs to hear the story, their struggle, and their unwavering spirit. This is where my project comes in. I've risked my life. I live in hiding for 244 days and face personal danger to document the situation of how my family is being oppressed by the military junta by sneaking into the compound where my mother was house arrested. Through a combination of visual art and a personal experience, Trace or Absence weave a narrative of courage and resistance in the face of oppression. The new chapter of Trace or Absence is currently in the making to advocate for the freedom movement for the political dissidents who are trapped at Thai border. My goal is to give a voice to the silence, to shed light on their sacrifices, and to make the world aware of the relentless pursuit of justice and democracy. By sharing my experience and those of the countless others, I hope to inspire empathy, action, and change. Trace or Absence is not just a project, it's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Father was sentenced to 20 years of imprisonment and hard labor in 2022 by Honduras Kangaroo Court. He's inside 10 and 8 feet cell in isolation with no visitation. And in December 2022, he was secretly moved to Notorious Dawood prison to keep him away from mother. On October 2023, 4,162 people were killed, 25,363 people were arrested, 19,639 people are in prison, and 163 people have been sentenced to death. 5,073 women were arrested, 691 children were arrested, and 479 children were killed. These are not just simple numbers, these are lives. The actual numbers are significantly much higher.
Thank you so much, Anne and Grazia.
You're welcome. And yeah, we look forward to more questions and discussion later. And I'm going to I'll put some links in the chat.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to move to our next panelist. But as I said, at any point, if any of you would like to interject with a question or a comment, don't like that beautiful heart I see arising. That's lovely. But if you'd like to pose a question or anything, just put up your hand and we can break into more discussion. But if no one's putting up a hand, just hearts, that's lovely. I'm going to turn now to Kofi Oduro. It's a real pleasure to introduce Kofi. He's a live coder, musician, and visual artist, and he's a member of RISE Collaborative Improvisational Micro Operas. Check out his website, https://portfolio.ilapricha.com, and also check out his Instagram. He's extremely active with visual works there. Kofi will talk about live coding and his anti-racism, multisensorial, and plurilingualism projects. Over to you, Kofi.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So, yeah, some people might be wondering, how does code, anti-racism, or all the anti-isms, multisensory, and plurilingualism go together? Well, that's the world we live in. We live in a world where language shapes us every day and based on how we see, feel, taste, even smell, can affect our relations. And then due to these interactions, also affect how we interact with other humans. For example, this color blue might not have been prevalent in some cultures in the past because in countries, blue was a very expensive country. So the notion of what blue is could be noble, whereas in another country, it could be on a lower scale. This is something we don't think about when we're thinking about cross-pollination, or even when it comes to language. As in Quebec, there's always been a language debate, but one of the best things I heard while studying French was, if you look at the intensity, sometimes we're saying the same thing, but differently. So in English, marching is a certain type of walk. Marcher in French means to walk. Chanting is a form of singing or not singing, but in French, chanter means to sing. And then we can go on with walking, promenade, or we can go with rapid, fast. So these are some of the things of why plurilingualism, which is different than multilingualism, is taken to the fact that every language, every culture has a place. But how do we combine them to be human? So this is how I do it with work, because when people think of code, people think of code as algorithms and math, but it's just a way to communicate with technology, a way to communicate with others that are outside the realm, and sometimes to communicate within ourselves. So one question I like to ask, and people who are watching this or even some of the panelists can answer, I like to ask this question because it also shows that sometimes there's a gap in human rights and art can explore, because sometimes we don't even understand what rights and boundaries we have in ourselves. So one question I like to pose is, what is your 7th favorite meal? What is your 5th favorite color? And what's your 3rd favorite smell? Some of you are probably like, oh, that's easy. But once you think about it, you're forced to come down with a breakdown. You're forced to come down with a framework. It's not a question that you can answer easily. And I've been doing this for a while, but through every interaction, I have changed. And I always have wondered when people ask me that, why I cannot answer that consistently. And it comes to this whole thing of pluriculturalism, because every time I talk, whatever answer I hear or whatever answer someone tells me or feeds me affects my viewpoint. So when it comes to this whole human rights concept of art, art is one of those fields that has touched every culture. Whenever you look at every culture, there is art, health, engineering, nurturing. There's always food. Everyone eats. There's always a need to create because we touch, we hear, we see. So it's one of those things that art and human rights have to be synonymous in some ways, because without art, how can we express ourselves? So, like, back to that question that I asked, that's an artistic question. What's your favorite color? But when you think about it, it does show your inherent bias, which sometimes we're not aware of. Because to come up with a color, are you going to go with your 10th favorite color and then go 9, 8, 7? Are you going to do what they call in programming a binary search and think about, oh, we're going to go with the 5th and then 6, 7? Or are you going to go brute force, which is, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? There is no right way. And you can make up an answer, and I cannot even challenge you if it's true or not, because I don't know what your framework is. You could have been like, it's random. And this is what I think that it's a lesson that we can take in arts, because sometimes in art we allow the ability to hear, we allow the ability to feel, we allow mistakes to happen, and then we build on their mistakes. Typical thing if people do painting is called the ugly phase, where there is this same notion that before you get to beauty, you got to go through phases of ugliness. But there's always a point where you are allowed to restart. And this is a question that I think can pose through when we go through this multi-sensory anti-racism, all the anti-isms, anti-sexism, anti-trans, and all the stuff is, where are we allowing our framework to end when we know it's not consistent? And that's why I also like about the question I asked earlier. And it does go with like improvisational coding, because you start realizing that most of our answers are improvisational due to the thing. I can ask you this question 1 hour from now and guarantee that your answers might change based on who you talked to right before or based on what you're just eating. And right now it just came after lunch, so we're probably thinking in a lunch form. So if we apply this ideology to life and human rights, then think about how many times when you communicate with someone, what inherent biases or misconceptions or facts did you have when you enter that conversation, right? Like, there's this quote from Men in Black where Jay is talking to the character Tom, and they were like, well, people are stupid, persons are smart, because 500 years ago we knew the earth was the center of the universe. Now in the last 200 years we knew the world is the 3rd planet, and in the last 5 years we now know that Pluto's not really a planet. But depending on who you talk to, some people are like, but no, when I was young, I learned about Pluto was a planet. I learned about this. So it's one of those things that we have to realize that things are ever changing. And that's where I think that now the new Sega of also human rights does include the elements of AI and code, as explained by Phil and all that, because AI is just a collection of humanity. But humanity has so much different points. Are we looking from humanity from a Eurocentric point? Are we adding Afrocentric elements? Are we adding a heap amount of non-binary and women voices or femme presenting? Are we allowing people that are 5 years old to be in this database? Or even if you're 95, who voices are eradicated and who voices are implemented are in. And that's some of the things that when I go through these live coding processes or in my art, I try to engage with, like who voices are we letting in? How are biases? And one thing that I've been doing recently that works is by translating food into sound into color, but also building languages from scratch. So not only programming languages, like try to build a language from scratch. So like a language that's not rooted in anything our society sees today. So it doesn't have no Latin base unless you want a Latin base, like a language that's utter gibberish. And then you start realizing that now you've confronted with how do we explain? And it's one of those things that it sort of regains humanity, that even in this time when we think there's a lot of bad going on in the world, we have climate change, we have man-made stuff, we have the rise of AI. But one thing is the human ability to create, adapt, destroy. And destruction is not always a bad thing. And that's where I think that like art can help. There is substance of destruction to improve. And then if there's questions, we can ask that later and all that. And I do hope that some of you were able to answer that question. I know it's a tough question. I still don't have the answers to a lot of that, but I'm getting closer. I see that someone said magenta. So we're going to ask you in 2 hours and let's see if it still remains magenta.
Thank you, Kofi. For sure, it's a tough question, and we will try to send some answers later. Okay, so now, yes, if I'm not wrong, or visiting the Nirvana, we're moving to Stanley Fevrier. He's a visual artist and a sculptor based in Montreal. And if you want to learn more about him and his amazing work, you can visit his website at www.fevrierstanley.com. Stanley will present an art video on themes of embodied art practice, authoritarian violence, and the racialized other. Stanley, when you want. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, everyone, to be here. I don't see myself. I don't know why, but it's okay.
We can see you.
Oh, you see me, okay. So I'm a visual artist. So I have my master. I made my study in Montreal University in Quebec. So my art practice, my interest, it's about the violence and the value of humankind in the modern world. So how we can define today what's to be human being. When we're talking about human rights, what that really means. So if you're here today speaking in peace, we have a freedom to travel, we have a freedom to eat, we have a privilege. So how we can say it's right for us in another country, they have a lot of people, even they can stay in the street to say a word. So in 2016, when I was young, when I was 17, I think, I make a travel with 22 young people with me. We go into Morocco because we have a project there. So I was the only Black people in that group. So when we became in the airport, so they took me, I'm a Canadian, so I'm born in Montreal, I'm grew up in Canada. So I know how to learn in Canada, I did everything. So they took me for 2 hours, check my papers and everything. So I didn't know why. And one of the friends with me said, it's very easy, look at you. Okay, so now I knew because of my color that we have different traits. So in 2016, I was listening like everyone, the migrant issue in Europe. So they have a big huge studies by two journalists who make the migrant files. If you can see it, I will put the link. So more over 30% in refugees and migrants died from 2000 and 2020. So that people spend €1 billion to try to go to Europe, and the European Union spent the same money to take them out. So what I did, it's an infiltration. I take a travel to Greece to start in Italy, to going from Greece to Italy as a migrant. So I will show you the video for the first place we have been. So it's here. So the name of that camp, it's Chios. It's in Greece. When they see, I don't know if you hear me.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. That sea, it's the place we come in the night with the boat. I don't know how to say that in English. You know, the boat, plastic boat, and everyone came by night. So here is the first place, camp. When you come in, you stay there for a couple days, for a couple weeks before you will meet some why you say that social workers in Greece. So that place is supposed to take only 600 people. We was like near to 2,000 people living there. So I was there for a week. The image coming. So the crazy things here, it's you have that child that even understand what's happening. And every day they go to the sea, playing, swimming, like nothing's happening. That's the contract was very important for me to see, even in that case, they still have hope. As a human, we can create something different. So the children give that to us. One minute left. So I have a small video. Okay, now you will see the camp. I would stop it. And so in that case, do you hear me? Because I don't know if, okay. So the reason you don't see a lot of people when I take the movie because it's what the dinner time, all the people take the line to go to eat. That's the one of the reason. And the second time, outside the camp, we can go out. We have only 1 kilometer. You can go around. So if you go behind 1 kilometer, you will be arrested. So they have 2 camps, and that part when we have Vial, it lies very like a soldier camp. It's very strict. It's like a prison. So every camp like a prison. You have a soldiers and then the entrance, and that's what you see. It's where we're from the sea. So the entrance, and when you want to go inside, go outside, you have military outside waiting for you. So when I will show you, it's very important. When you're in the camp, you don't have identity, you don't have a name. We all have a numbers. So every day you can see in that paper, they told you how many people that day who came in the night. And after that, the very important thing, they give us a number. Oh, you see, we all have the numbers and we have meetings. So they took a group of people every day to meet them, to ask where you from, why you here. So how long you took to come here. So the interesting thing is happening to me. You see, that's the camp and the day. Now it's lunchtime. So after that, I moved from Greece to make the world, working with some people and pay, why do you say, the pastor, the people you pay to go to country. So when I was in Serbia, it's very crazy because in that camp, it's very strange. All people was very, very young. They all men, young people. I couldn't understand why. So one of them tell me it's because their parents were so old and they stop in the middle of the journey. So they just send the children to take the boat. So in that project, I did a project with them to tell me where they're from, how much they pay, how long the trip during. So they're all from, a lot of them from Syria and Afghanistan, as you know. But it's crazy to see that it was a business. So no one do something because that people spend a lot of money. It's another business again, and you can use human suffering to make capitalists. And all that things happening today is still happening. And I think we have a power to change things. As a human, you have a lot of possibility. So I think as an artist, what I've tried to do is to expose that reality to the people, to show them it's easy to watch it in the video and your salon and your coach and the news, but the reality is different. It's really people who's dying, they don't have future. We took all to them. And so what we have to do to change, if we really want to change things, what I have to do as a person. We all have responsibility in it. So that the reason I make art is trying to make social movement, social transformation to try to keep my humanity on me and create a space all the people can do the same. I think we have a possibility to do that we're doing right now. We're trying to keep the humanity we have, to be very sensitive to all that thing. We all the same. So let's keep doing what we're doing. Always questioning who we are, where we're going, what we have to do to have more people unexcluded and the dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Stanley. That's really, really beautiful. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to Dr. J. Marchand Knight, who is a doctor of voice pedagogy, an opera singer, and an educator focused on gender diversity. They are an Indie PhD student in Fine Arts, Concordia University, member of RISE Collaborative Improvisational Micro Operas. They love to sing and make music almost as much as they love to teach others about singing and making music. Their goal is to create a safe and inclusive learning environment where students' goals, needs, and learning styles set the tone for learning. You can learn more about Jay at juanitamarchand.com. Jay will talk about voice discrimination in everyday life and the arts, and coaching trans people to develop and enhance their vocal identities. Over to you, Jay.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So yeah, I'm going to do my best to share my screen and not, mess all the Zoom stuff up. Here we go. Share sound, optimize for video. Voila. Okay, now let me get off of the view where you can see all my notes and stuff. I need to go to, I feel like they've changed PowerPoint. Am I crazy? Or presenter view. All right. Let's hope for the best. There we go. All right. So hopefully you see just my presentation and not my notes. So yes, I'm Jay. I use they, them pronouns. I am a neurodiverse, BIPOC, parent of 3, and I'm coming to you from unceded land in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And I just, again, thank you so much. So I want to start off by sharing a quote that I really like from the Canadian poet Anne Carson. It is in large part according to the sounds people make that we judge them sane or insane, male or female, good, evil, trustworthy, depressive, marriageable, moribund, likely or unlikely to make war on us, little better than animals, inspired by God. These judgments happen fast and can be brutal. And so this is kind of part of the inspiration for the kind of work I'm doing, because just, anecdotally interacting with trans people, I understand that, to order a pizza as a trans person, you have to pick up the phone, or you did once upon a time before Uber Eats, you had to pick up the phone and actually order the pizza. And when you say hello and they say, hello, sir, or hello, ma'am, they're already passing judgment and often misgendering people, and that's very hurtful. But there's kind of more to it than that. It can be a lot more serious than this, because if you walk into a public space and you're presenting very feminine, opening your mouth and having a voice that doesn't match or meet the expectations of the people around you, that can actually lead to real violence for people. Not only that, but being a member of the Black community, I'm aware that the sounds of Black voices, or what in the United States they actually call Blaccent, can sort of negatively affect your ability to get work, for example. So this is a very serious thing, voice discrimination. And what can the arts do to help? So first, as Oonagh said, I am a member of RISE, and I chose to highlight a different piece because I know there are other RISE members here, and so you've been exposed to some of the work we've done as a group. But this was a chamber opera that was commissioned by Opera Queens, and they are a queer, trans, BIPOC company. We decided in this piece to highlight the women in Cleopatra's life, because they are often left out of the story. So specifically Arsinoe, Cleopatra's sister, and Charmian, Cleopatra's lady-in-waiting. So no Caesar, no Mark Antony. They do not appear as characters in the opera. You will hear their names, but they're not there. I decided that the voice parts should not be assigned in stone. This is kind of an uncommon practice in opera. Usually feminine perceived or feminine played roles are treble, soprano, mezzo, alto, and masculine roles will be played by tenor, baritone, or bass voices, and sometimes countertenor, which is problematic designation. I'll explain a little bit more about that stuff later on. So the voice parts aren't in stone, which means that if a trans woman who sings as a tenor, for example, take one of the roles, she can. Let's see. So no singer in this opera need be cast to any from any particular race, gender identity, or physical ability. So it would not wreck the story, for example, or upset me if a cisgender man in drag wanted to play one of these roles. Or there are two roles, Egypt and the Nile, who I saw as two separate sides of Cleopatra, the younger Cleopatra and the older Cleopatra. Could be played by a man, doesn't really matter to me. However, from a practical point of view, since we have more women studying opera than men in general, it's always useful to have operas that have more roles for women, so that, when you have 2 tenors in the program and 15 sopranos, all the sopranos are fighting for those 2 roles, and the tenors just keep getting cast in everything. So it also kind of helps with that. And one important thing is that when I have a say in where operas are performed, rehearsed, and auditioned for, I choose accessible spaces, not just for the singers, but for the audience as well. We have a real problem where singers with limited mobility, for example, can't perform because they can't get up on stage. There's all kinds of stairs and things backstage. And so having an open opera in the round kind of space can help that. But audience members are prohibited as well if they have limited mobility, and the theater isn't accessible if there aren't gender neutral bathrooms, etc. As an artist and creator, I'm in a position to create change by modeling change in my work, and not just what the work is about or representing, but also in how it's performed and rehearsed. I really believe in safe spaces, trauma-informed teaching, trauma-informed performance and creation. Okay, so here we go. As many of you surely know, in '94, O.J. Simpson was arrested for the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown. And this was a really important event in contemporary Black history. But a very interesting thing that happened was that a key witness was asked if he heard a Black man outside Nicole Brown's house on the night of the murder. Not if he saw a Black man, but if he heard one. And this begs the question, what does it mean to sound Black or to sound like a man? So here I would like to invite you to grab a piece of paper if you want, or just do this in your mind, but I'm going to play some voices, and I want you to imagine the speaker or the singer. Are they tall, short, Black, white, Asian, man, woman? And just, kind of examine this. So here we go. Voice 1.
Shit, it's just something about when you get the, when you get that AC blowing, man, and them older cars, man. But that one right there, that 91 Fleetwood, that was, man, I love that car.
So could you all hear that? Great. Okay, voice number 2. And voice number 3. Whoops. Where's my thingy? And number 4.
And you lend me the
All right. So now the big reveal, right? Our first speaker was Paul Wall, who is a white rapper.
Shit, it's just something about when you get the, when you get that AC blowing, man.
Okay, so our second speaker, Mercedes McCambridge, who was a Hollywood starlet, but did the voice of Pazuzu in The Exorcist, so voiceover actress. And so people always say, like, who would have imagined that voice came out of that pretty little girl, right? Our third voice, Adrian Angelico, who is a transgender man, an opera singer, but also an indigenous Sami person from Norway. So singing indigenous music, singing in an indigenous language, also a man. This is generally not what people expect. And our last voice was Helbjørg Nielsen, who is a cisgender woman who had a baritone singing voice. And this was her singing Old Man River.
And you landed, yeah.
Right? So when we had voices like this in the past, like Helbjørg, they were kind of pushed to the margins because we always wanted to go with the voices we were used to and we expected. This chart right here that I made, clear as mud, is about the Fach system. So some of the preconceived ideas that we have about voices come from the world of music. And this is a handy dandy chart made to help us understand how voices are classified. There are about 30 categories. Fach translates to box. So 30 boxes that we put voices in and put people in. Oops, I apologize. And even with all of those, in the center here, we have this ambiguous column that's Zwischenfach, which literally means between boxes, and the baritenor, which means a voice in between baritone and tenor. We also have countertenors. It's very complicated, and it just shows you how tightly and how strictly we like to classify voices. So some of my thesis work is exploring these biases. I had people listen to a voice.
Kids are talking by the door.
And then classify it. So this voice was rated soprano. Then they watched,
Kids are talking.
Sorry. They watched a silent video. And they had to guess a voice type.
By the Kids door. Are talking by the
Sorry
door.
that this is all playing at once. Then after, shuffling a bunch of videos, they rated the voices again in AV combination. And this person's rating was dragged down because people thought, well, this looks like an alto or a mezzo. And when they saw the AV combination, they did rate the voice higher than they had in the video alone, but they still pulled down their rating from when they heard the voice by itself. This is because of AV integration. And so to some extent, our brains have to integrate material, and that helps us make sense of the world. For example, if you're in a noisy environment, you will read lips to try to understand what people are saying. You will read body language. You will listen for the tone of their voices. You might even sense the temperature coming off their skin. So we hear and listen with our whole bodies and all our senses. We also form mental images of sound sources when we hear them. So when you hear music playing, you're gonna go, is that a clarinet? Is it a guitar? Is it a piano? We kind of can't help but do this. So there's also this perceptual phenomenon called the McGurk effect, where vision interacts with hearing, and it creates an illusion. So you're hearing a sound that doesn't really exist because your vision is kind of taking over part of that. And because of this, we develop these implicit or explicit biases about voices and appearance, but they're also based on culture, expectation, previous knowledge. Biases learned though, so it can be unlearned. Transgender people live with this dissociation every day, and the trans participants exhibited less bias in our study than the cis ones. As evidenced by the O.J. Simpson trial, voice bias also negatively affects people of color. In a study on Siri voices, participants judged the voice that sounded like a Black man as less competent and professional than the other Siri voices, even the Black men. And this means that Black men and boys, like my uncles, my cousins, my son, are internalizing these centuries-old racist, erroneous, colonialist narratives about their inherent value. I'll remind you of this woman who was one of the only people of color who was an actor in the study, and her voice was dragged way down, right? It opens up another question, not just about gender, which is what we were looking at.
Kids are talking by the door.
Sorry.
Kids are talking by.
But about color, skin color as well. But how can the arts help? Going back to what I said at the beginning, we can change the ingrained beliefs people hold about voices, gender, skin color, which are in large part a product of this Fach system, which is Western European classical musical ideal. We can broaden ideas about formal group singing to include people with different skill sets, levels of ability. We can hold auditions, rehearsals, performance in accessible spaces for both audience and performer. We can change our ideas about what is a good sound or good music, because coming from the Western classical background, what happens to music like the blues? What happens to indigenous musics? What happens to Indian classical music? We just look at Beethoven and Wagner and Mozart. What about everybody else? We can question what makes opera opera, which Rise is doing. We can stop casting people of color as only slaves, criminals, whores, witches, and devils. We can begin to acknowledge that cis women with low voices have always existed and cis men with high voices have always existed, but were pushed aside in favor of singers who met our voice body expectations. And we can accept and accommodate trans singers in our ensembles without discrimination and set a positive example for society at large. And quickly, some references, which I can, share with you later if y'all want. And I'm looking forward to talking. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Jay, for this inspiring presentation. Well, I would like to move now to Elsy Zavarce. She's a visual and photographic artist researcher based between Montreal and Maracaibo in Venezuela. She's interested in the art process and how art making is a way to foster communities. From early on, she was interested in exploring notions of identity, social issues, urban sensibility, and cultural diversity. Now, an immigrant, she reflects on her history, memories, and experiences, and through the eyes of an artist, expresses her response in a critical and sensitive way. You can learn more about her by visiting her Instagram account at Elsy Zavarce. Elsy will discuss Cocoon series on exile, migration, transforming, right?
Yeah.
See?
Thank you, Ramon.
You can go on.
Yeah, my participation is really short, as told Oonagh and I told you before, but I thought it was really important to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. So I would like to talk a little bit about my series of pictures that I did early this year, and I share with you in the event that Oonagh invited us in Concordia. So the series is, it was really special for me. After 4 years, I went back to Venezuela. I went to my archive and I did a work with my photo that I did long time ago. So I reproduced the pictures in textile, and I went to a very special place in my city. It's a park in front of the lake, and I did my first video performance. So I immersed myself in the production of the work. First time I'm in front of the camera, not behind the camera, and I did it with a friend, dear friend, Silvia Martinez. She was a choreographer, and Angel Leiva was a photographer. I think Oonagh was going to share some of the pictures. She had it in the loop that she had with all our images from the event that we share in the beginning of the year. So Cocoon, for me, was so my first photo performance. It was performed in the Paseo El Lago in front of the Maracaibo Lake. It's the city where I come from. The lake that was the dragged to be able to take out our oil, reach the oil that is in our land in tanks. So I am wrapped in a fabric, printed with the edited image of a little girl that I took pictures a long time ago, Patricia. She is now well known as a Wayuu princess because of her indigenous background. And she went away a long time ago. She left the country, and this photo is from my archive. The series is has a personal meaning as a migrant, and about the transformation we must overcome. For me, it's very symbolic, because the Wayuu princess, which is the the girl that the model that is in the rap. The Wayu princess left long time ago to seek success in the northern lands. Now somehow opening the way for the many Venezuelan who went after. It is now I'm part of that diaspora, the 7 million of Venezuela that have left the country. So it is a tribute for me for the 7 million of Venezuelan migrants that now allowed over the war, and they're like trying to understand and trying to make meaning of everything that we are going through. So for me, it's a transformative series. And right now I'm really looking forward to experience that hot weather and that sun, because I'm right now in Montreal and kind of cold and suffering for a flu. So thank you. And I'm really excited to be here and share it with you this series of Cocoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsy. That was beautiful. And I hope you could see the pictures well enough in the slides there. They are really beautiful and sort of freeing in that wonderful weather and the beautiful cloth. So our next and final speaker of this group is Eldad. And it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Eldad Tsabary, who is, I should say, first and foremost, my supervisor for my doctoral thesis, but he also has other jobs. He's an associate professor, music chair, Department of Music, co-director, Performing Arts Research Cluster at La Parc, Concordia University, and principal investigator for the HRREC-funded Reflective Iterative Scenario Enactments, which we all call RISE, collaborative improvisational micro-operas. Eldad will discuss collaborative improvisational RISE micro-opera and the Clork laptop orchestra. Over to you, Eldad.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. I think everything that I've been doing has had to do in some ways with our human condition. Like in particular, in the case of RISE and Clork, which are currently the platforms I'm mostly engaged with. I think the thing that drives me most is this idea of co-doing multiplicitously, and it took time to figure out what is the term to actually describe that. I'm not sure it actually describes it perfectly, but words have this tendency to only dance around meanings and not actually give them. And looking at those platforms of co-doing as a model for addressing and transforming human rights, but among other things. I think that I see those platforms. Yes, there are research platforms, there are creation platforms, there are fun platforms, but really for me, there are also kind of labs where we're discovering what it means to do together and what it means to think together and be critical and be ethically driven and kind and just like have a platform where we can deal with hard stuff, but also do it in as safe a manner as possible, so we can actually face those things that are hard and talk about them. And so there is Clork, the laptop orchestra. Maybe I don't have a PowerPoint thing. I didn't think it would be useful for me. What is useful is I have a slideshow, and I'm just gonna have it running while I'm speaking. And to me, this slideshow of images is even preferable over video, because I think a video is, while a video kind of like is a portrayal of what's happening in those situations, I find images can be a much more realistic than video, because they can use imagination better. They don't overtake your imagination. You can actually just see those pictures and imagine for yourself what it means. And I think what you can see in all of these images, which is a random collection of, one event in particular in RISE, which is Why Do We Dream? Was started and led by Valentina Plata. And some performances by the Laptop Orchestra. And I think in all of them, what you can see is the people, the multiplicitous nature of like just doing stuff. Like, visually, it's engaging in different ways, and sonically, you can only imagine, but it's often very dense. But it's very, very rich and very transformative and improvisational. And I think perhaps one important thing for me to acknowledge about art as a platform for conversing, doing, thinking about human arts is that Kofi was mentioning how like human life has so many layers. If it's beliefs, perceptions, truth, creations, adaptations, distractions, connections, of course. I think that art is not really separate from human life. It's not like we have a job and we have a life and we're parents, we're teachers, we're researchers, whatever. All of this to me is like one thing. Like art is just one of our many potential for discourse, for doing, for creating, for interacting. And as such, its role in human rights is like, just like, is any other thing, any other part of our potential in dealing with human rights. It's just, it has particular elements in it that are really cool. And Grazia was mentioning some of these aspects before, like how art is special or different in the way we work, the way we perceive, and the brain works. And I wanted to add mostly around that point. Like, why is the art an interesting platform for conversing and doing, and transforming human rights? So I think a few things. One, it's a very imaginative, inventive platform. And as we want to transform, we want to think outside the box, especially when we do stuff together, when we're all very different. We need to think outside the box in order to make those connections across things that initially may seem conflicting. I think when we go one layer back or more layer back with our imaginations, and we can do that with imagination, we start seeing connections, or we start finding ways to integrate different ways of thinking, different ways of being, and different needs and different problems. And I think the arts are just like perfect for that because they're visionary and imaginative. Another thing about arts in the realm of knowledge is that they are good as an exploratory, in an exploratory kind of configuration, right? Sometimes we think about research as a way of working with facts, working with perceptions, assumptions, working with hypothesis, with questions, with things that we kind of like lay out in a linear fashion and sometimes very isolated fashion in more conventional terms. In the arts, we allow exploration ground up more than in any other form of knowledge. And we need that. We need that because we don't know what to ask sometimes. We don't know how to or even what to explore in order to find these connections. So the exploratory and imaginative nature of the art is a good start for discovering and conversing human rights. Another really amazing thing about art and art making and doing and being in the arts is that it's constantly, we are in constant critique mode when we perform, for example. We're constantly measuring what we're there, our awareness is in a flow state where we're there every second. Everything is under scrutiny, internally, externally too, but internally, did we choose the right motion? Did we choose the right speed? Did we choose the right color? There is always constant critique and in a very detailed manner in the way we are while doing art and while expressing and perceiving art. And we need that as well, like in trying to think about or trying to see where the issues or the blockages are in making our life better and making our human rights, or in discovering ways in which human rights can be, well, they're rights. They should be inclusive, right? Another thing that the arts do that is good for this form of transformation, by nature, art is exploring and pushing against and breaking boundaries. And I think in discovering how we can work together, we work a lot with boundaries of our different perceptions, and we imaginatively can bounce around them, cross them when necessary, expand our perceptions. And then comes the kind of stuff that we work with when we perform, which is art in real time. And that's, I think that what this does when we improvise, when we interact with each other in real time, when we listen to each other and respond, when we see what others are contributing, and we contain it, process, and provide some provide some addition to it. We do it in real time. It's kind of like developing a fluency in this type of interaction. It's like, like in languages, we can learn vocabulary and grammar by the books, alone, but it only becomes real when we are in this conversation and we develop this ability to be fluent. And I think that is required we work with other people in real time. We need to be able to know where we can fail in the way we talk, in the way we identify other people, in the way we miss or unintentionally disrespect important elements in other people. So this fluency to me is really important, and I think we develop that in doing it in real time, both in performance and in the critique and the discussions that we do after. Another thing in the arts that is, two things that are kind of like complement each other. There is the co-creation element. We are doing something together that is new and has its own life, but it also has us in it, and it includes, hopefully, that's what we're trying to have been constantly trying to get to, like include our individuals, and in a way that every voice has a space to be and to express and to influence and to be heard, at least, and to interact with the group. Now that's been an interesting challenge for many years for me, like always trying to find a place where I think everybody has a voice and everybody has space, and then I discover the places I don't see that actually this is not true. And it's a constant thing. I don't know if there is an answer to it, except for like we continue to investigate and look into it and open up the space and build all this safety for things to emerge. But it's a primary goal in this situation of creating together. To me, is like this co-creation is multiplicitous. I don't no longer call it collective. In the past, I used to say collective improvisation. I found that collective as a concept, and again, words are never precise, but the collective as a concept to me is like there is an entity that we join into, while this multiplicity is more about we are the entity. Like each one of us, whatever they bring, whatever this individuality, if it's skills, if it's perceptions, if it's wills and wishes, that is the DNA of this thing that is together, and it's a more inclusive way of creating together than sort of joining the collective and doing for the collective, like the Borg. So that's one important thing I find, and the other one, and that's the last thing I'm going to say, is space for individuals to also explore internally. So while we're doing together, but everybody needs that space to go and be alone in the studio, be alone in their journals, be alone in their thoughts, and develop that in the safest space, just alone. And I think these two are really important aspects of this, finding the balance, in actually caring for others and caring for yourself. And I just find that the arts are so flexible and so imaginative and so exploratory and so critical, that this kind of platform is very useful for transforming quickly. Not necessarily linearly. We can jump to the moon and back if we need to, just to see something from a different angle. So yes, so that's my mind right now, in terms of like how this is useful for me in exploring and discovering how the arts can really, be a platform for exploring and conversing human rights. But really, arts is for everything. Like it's not for something. It just is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eldad, for that great talk and slideshow. That was lovely. I'm reminded of a couple of things from Jay's presentation and also from yours when you talked about fluidity and reparative work all the time. And I'm very sorry to everyone in this group, but I forgot to read land acknowledgement at the beginning of this event. And I have an absolutely gorgeous one. So may I read it now? Will we all accept it, even though it comes late, and maybe it'll influence the conversation we have next? But I do have this really nice land acknowledgement that was prepared by a very good friend, Wayne Garnon Williams. And he worked on it with the Intertribal Trade and Investment Organization and Queen's Conference on Indigenous Reconciliation. So let me read it. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada, it is customary to acknowledge the traditional territories or ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. We are meeting virtually, so I would like to acknowledge that the Indigenous peoples are the original occupiers, traditional stewards, and the inherent protectors of the lands and waters where each of us attends this meeting today. We are grateful to live on, learn from, and enjoy this land and commit ourselves to decolonization in our personal lives, our businesses, organizations, schools, and in our communities. The commitments we make in this land acknowledgement must be actively pursued and come with the belief that decolonization begins with reconciliation with all Indigenous peoples, inclusive of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. If reconciliation is to be successful, we must continue to deepen the ways in which we listen to, learn from, and support Indigenous peoples in their resilience, resistance, and self-determination. We remind our non-Indigenous participants that it is our duty to learn about the territories we occupy and to work towards a relationship that fosters reconciliation between all nations. In this reminder, we would like to acknowledge the importance of seeking Indigenous voices in matters affecting these communities and to be mindful of the multiple opinions, experiences, and needs which exist within each individual and collective. To our Indigenous participants, supporters, and leadership, we thank you deeply for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us, and we look forward to working with you today and in the future. So there is a very nice land acknowledgement, a little late in the session, but it's there nonetheless, and hopefully add something to the event. Ramon, we have amazing questions from the group. Should we put them out to the audience now, or are there any questions? Has Caroline received any questions we should pursue? Over to you.
Yes, sure. I don't know if Caroline received any question, but if not, otherwise we should, start by the questions that we previously, listed. So why don't we start with the first one? If you want, I can read it. Well, we have here by proposal by Emergent Art Space, what does it mean to foster human rights through the arts? So I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about it, something. Or even we can jump on other points, since today, if you have written down anything from anyone, Anne and Grazia, I don't know if you want to say something.
What is the question?
Well, I think that are we on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think that everyone's presentation really addressed in a diversity of ways has provided rich answers to this question, and it certainly deepened my own understanding of the different ways that we can think about this, and particularly was glad that Eldad went last because he did a beautiful framing of so many of the issues, and I was just writing down. So I think, like having a framework like that to think with when we're considering these issues is helpful. But I loved for me, I started thinking about art as a form of play that evolves from childhood, and deepens as we grow. And as in childhood, that's the way we begin to construct and understand our world, but we often stop doing that as adults, so I think artists have a particular richness to share with people who aren't in the arts, and a way of helping people understand how to combine complex linear and nonlinear subconscious and logical thinking, and to raise, particularly to like envision new questions, and new explorations as a way into surfacing new kinds of knowledge.
Yeah. And I want to add on that because I think Stanley and Jay's presentation really struck on a point that you just mentioned, Anne, about this notion of logical thinking, because logic isn't always logic. So, one of the things that people try to say about the art is not logical. But if you go with Stanley's point, Stanley, you were born in Canada, raised in Canada, studied in Canada. But once you step overseas, someone's like, oh, but we don't think you're Canadian. But like logically, you would be like, if you're born here, you study here, you speak two languages, you should be seen as Canadian. But in reality, that's not the case. And Jay, with your presentation on the voices, a lot of times we don't even realize that sometimes linguistic stuff or how people talk is not even a race thing, it's geographical. So that's one thing I have realized, like going to the States versus Canada. In the States, if someone is from the southern states, that southern accent sort of draws onto you. I remember I have stayed in Tennessee and Texas for Tennessee for 2 weeks and Texas for 1 week, and I'm like, oh damn, I'm getting some southern terms out of my mouth. So we know that if you go to New England, I don't know if anyone has watched The Nanny. The Nanny, that high nasal New Jersey accent. But if you come to a place like Canada, it's weird because Canada, I know some people that have lived in Canada for 30 plus years and they have retained their original accent with some Canadianism. So it's also that I think also plays on like what we consider logic, that just because you're from a place or you're not a place, that you cannot assimilate. And I think one of our greatest assimilations tends to be like music or art rights. Like Stanley, you travel due to art. Eldad, you do all these pieces through music. Oonagh, you art and law. And Jay, like we talk about Paul Wall, and like I know a lot of people from Houston. Doesn't matter if you're Latino, white, Arab, or anything, you're still probably gonna rap the same way it's been shown. So I think that's what like the whole point of logic is very interesting, because art and other disciplines have shown that logic is not logical. Like common sense is not common, but yet we still use that term. So I think that's like one of the things to realize, that like commonality and logicality are not universal, and that's something we should stop taking for granted.
Yeah, thank you, Kofi. Oonagh, are you going to say something? Or
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I really think this has been an incredibly rich discussion. If anyone else wants to say something, what I was going to suggest perhaps is we could go around and just do a little quick round. Does anyone have any last thoughts they want to put out there? And then we could close up, or we could go through the questions. What do people feel? Would you like to do another question, or?
Are there questions from the audience? Are there questions?
Yeah, we can read all of them if you want. And
Sure.
then
I was wondering, are there questions from the audience?
No, that's why we're working on our own questions. So Ramon, do you want to read all the questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna read them and then we can open everything up. So the next question is, what do the arts allow us to do that cannot be done simply through human rights and environmental rights advocacy? Do the arts include or exclude? How do we enhance inclusivity and challenge exclusivity in the arts? How do digital technology and artificial intelligence enable or hinder creative work or human rights and environmental protection? How can the arts address issues like migration, exile, loss of home, homelessness, resilience? Can we use the arts to process grief, fear, or anger, to make difficult transitions, build resilience and recreate ourselves? How can the arts address issues like climate change, plastic pollution, extinction of species, etc.? How far can the arts creative work reach? Discussion of we could discuss here about teaching, collaborating, demonstrating creative work in the community. Can the arts creative work save the world? Well, we can address this again, your 7th favorite color, Kofi, and why you think you have 7 favorite colors, right? And other questions that you can address this. Well, Stanley raised, okay, thank you.
So I don't know if art can save the world, but I think what art can do, it's like alarm, when you have an alarm system at home, they have a fire, what saved your life? It's the alarm or because you make action to go out? So I think with art, we can send some alarm, red light, what's happening now, what's going on. And because the society, I think as an artist, I have a privilege, I can say, to think. I'm not working 9 to 5, so I have a time to question in who I am. I have a time to try to understand what I'm doing in this society, why I have to keep living. So when you have 9 to 5, you have to pay rent. You have a way, what you talking universal normal, and you don't have time for that things, to thinking. You don't have, because you have to survive. It's the thing, I think, art make me now. I'm not in surviving mode. I have time to questioning things. I have a time to explore and to understand what a process means. I think that's thing we can use art to send that alarm, what that means to be in process. We don't experiment in life. I think it's personal what I said. When I start to do, before I was producing art, just produce things and to show, make exhibition. But one day I said, wow, I'm not living art. It's not in my body. It's not, why I have to think in it? Why I have to see the world with the art perception? So that's the reason for me, art not excluding, because when you have a perception of art, it's everywhere in the nature. Everything was built with art, everything, the tree, sunset, whatever, it's so beautiful. Everything was thinking for human joys, for us and animal, everything in the nature. So when we come in food, what's exclusion, it's when we took that thing for personal purpose. I think it's now art can be exclusive. When some museum collectors take it for himself, for his purpose, to see, look what I buy with that piece, come and see it, make a big exhibition. So it's very important, I think, for us as an artist to question why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think it's the way I see art. It's a tool for social change. I don't want to create things to maintain the art world. That's the thing that I try to do. How we have to resist, and that for sure with time always you can be caught by the system, because when you became famous, they try to keep you, and so I don't know, I'm just I have a big gratitude to do what I'm doing with people. We have the same interests, we have the same preoccupation.
Thanks for that, Stanley. I see Elsy would like to say something.
Yeah, well, I totally identify what Stanley is saying. I think art has a powerful energy to bring people together, to attract, like we have seen today. I think art can have that power to make us not just artists, a community, to come and so have that power to attract people. So that's what make it special, different of other disciplines, I think. And coming from so many different backgrounds, like we see today, we manage and we have the passion to go through all our troubles and share our experience. And I think that's what my art is able to make, brings many community, and also bring different mind from different backgrounds and disciplines to be able to dialogue and converse and think about how to really change what we have around. So I think we share that. So I think that's the power of art. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Yeah, really, the whole idea of doing this session in this celebration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was to bring the ideas about art to a broader community, and that experience that Elsy and Stanley you're talking about, of the privilege of being able to live art in your daily life. So you can feel like the suffering you're feeling, the pain, the anguish that we all feel in life, that we can use art to express that. It is a real privilege to be able to do that. And we want to share that, right? I mean, we want to give more of that opportunity to young people, as has been done by Emergent Art Space. That it's so important to get more people involved, because that expressive desire is in everybody. It's just people do get caught up in things and they don't have time for it. Are there any other comments that people would like to make?
I think, well, I don't know if I can actually form it. My brain is going in all kinds of directions, but I love everything that's being said. And, Stanley, I think you were talking about art as a channel for more than us. Of course, there is. And I was thinking about this as, well, obviously art is not limited to one or the other, right? Like we can do art for us too, just for our own health, and as you say, and I'm sure you do that too, like but even so, we are connecting with the nature. We're connecting, it's kind of it has, I guess, as I said, I couldn't actually form it very well, but I think it has a healing potential internally, like for us, just as individuals, and it has a healing potential for us with others, with our societies, with other people in general, and both are really useful and important. And I think that what you said about, it's basically a kind of a license to play, is what makes part of what makes art a softer healing. Like it's it's a kind of like alternative medicine kind of thing. It's like it's softer. It doesn't nuke you, to heal you. It does it in a very soft and very natural way, because it rounds the edges. We can deal with the hard stuff in the arts, right? But it's not like going on protest. Of course, going on protest is important. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we definitely need to shake things up, but arts have this ability to get in there, in a kind of like water through the cracks, like Bruce Lee said. It is a softer mechanism or softer platform or kinder, environment to do things, even hard ones. And Juanita, of course, you mentioned a lot of stuff that is not very kind, that happens in the arts. So it's not that it's a perfect. People are people, and we find ways to screw up everything. But but yet, we can go with the arts and through them to address those things and to address those issues and go into this very imaginative, very open, very outside the box way of healing. And this healing is not like we were sick and now we're going to be healthy. It's like healing is life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, adding to what Eldad said, I started thinking about art as a form of ongoing experimentation, right? And we don't know the answers. We're just flailing around and playing with things, talking to people. And what's interesting is different things emerge from that. And some things that emerge aren't so great. Other things are very generative. And that goes back to the name of emergent art space, because it's kind of our philosophy is not to kind of provide a platform that has all the answers, but is to provide an open platform where we can collectively explore and share ideas. Yeah.
And see what emerges.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's very beautiful. I see that we're really coming to the end of our time. Is there anyone who'd like to say a last word? Ramon, would you like to say a last word?
Well, a big thank you to all of you guys. Thank you, and thank you for all the people who has been visiting our discussion and hearing from us. Thank you, Oonagh, for all your effort, as always, and for me, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to you all. It's always so much fun. It is collaborative, it's experimental, and it's been wonderful having all the help from Carolyn to steer us through it. And you guys are all wonderful, and onward and upward. Let's keep going. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Strength.